Hi everyone, welcome to part 4. Okay, Keres has just played knight takes a6 and we just had a look at why that's a mistake. Fischer continued with f4. Now came rook d4 and king f5. And Fischer writes, this is the move that Keres missed when he sealed his 41st move, reckoning that he had probably anticipated instead f3, then knight c5, f2, knight e2 check, queen takes c4, rook takes e4, and f1 queen, which would lead to a dead draw since black can't create another passed pawn. So king f5, apparently Keres had missed this. And he played here knight b4, which wasn't the best defensive move. More resistance could have been offered with knight c5, but it still lost after queen e7, forking the knight and the h-pawn. Best play goes b4, but now queen takes h4, b5, queen f6, and black will win. So knight b4, and now queen e7 is what Fischer played, and as we just saw, this is a decisive maneuver. The knight is pinned, and Fischer writes this temporary pin is decisive because now black wins the h-pawn, and his two passed pawns become irresistible. Play continued, king b3, queen takes h4. See, if the knight hadn't been pinned, he could have moved to d3 or d4 and he'd be able to take now with counterplay. So queen takes h4, now knight d3 and g5, protecting the pawn on f4 and immediately getting the pawns rolling. There's no need to wait around, and Keres is forced to sacrifice his knight now. After c4, queen g3, again pinning the knight, c5, f3, king c4, breaking that pin so the knight can take on f2, which he's forced to now after Fischer plays f2. So knight takes f2, now queen takes f2, and Keres should really resign here, but he struggled on a bit longer with c6. So now came queen takes b2, king c5, queen c3 check, king d5. If instead rook c4, then queen a5 check, king d4, and queen c7 is winning for black. So king d5, now g4, and here was either a blunder or a gesture of appreciation for Fischer's play from Keres with rook c4, allowing queen e5 mate, and a fine victory for the teenager on the 53rd move of the game. So it's a brilliant game from Fischer, and we've got a bit of time left, so we may as well have a replay with the threatened squares on. So yeah, the notorious Neudorf variation of the Sicilian, which is a great opening, is one I've started using more and more myself recently. And what we really saw there from Fischer was a great example of how to play when you have a queen against a rook and a minor piece, because if you're in a position where you have a queen and your opponent has no weaknesses for you to attack, then it's often hard to find good constructive moves and plans to involve the queen with. And what he did there, when he got in behind the pawns up in this corner, and by opening the position, he created weaknesses in his opponent's position, and that meant the queen was much more effective. And as we saw there in some of the lines he gave that were drawn or where it was hard for black to make progress, it's when white is able to completely consolidate. And also this h5 or rook h6 maneuver was probably unexpected from Fischer. And as I was saying, that's a good approach when you find yourself facing a prepared variation. Not that it's ever happened to me, but just the theory behind it is intelligent, because it's going to bring your opponent to unprepared lines. Obviously makes sense. And yeah, so he, by opening up the position here and getting his queen in here, he created those weaknesses I was talking about in the white position, and that made his queen much more effective in the position. And yes, I mean, a very dangerous prepared variation to use against someone like Fischer, giving him a queen against a rook and a minor piece. Apparently Keres came up with it with a friend of his on a fishing trip, if the kibitzers at chessgames.com are to be believed. And for one reason or another, he chose to use it against Fischer. But as you saw there, at best it resulted in a draw for white, and it almost felt as though Keres didn't want to admit that, and he kept on pressing and, overextended his position where it was unfavourable for him to do so. And Fischer won relatively easily after a couple of inaccuracies or blunders from Keres, who, if he'd played perfectly, should have been able to hold for a draw there, I think. And as I was saying, it would be a great kind of opening gambit to learn if there wasn't that variation that definitely gave black an advantage, which we saw in the first video. So that's it anyway. A great game from Fischer to continue this series. I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave any comments or thoughts. Thanks very much.